Tonight, our special coverage on Israel's war on Palestine as the United Nations General Assembly votes overwhelmingly for a ceasefire. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Aisha Ashraf. Canada has made a significant political shift by voting in favor of a UN resolution calling for an immediate stop to the Israeli attacks in the Gaza Strip. A joint statement issued by the Prime Ministers of Canada, Australia, and New Zealand calls for a sustainable ceasefire. This is the first time Canada has used the term ceasefire since Israel's war on Palestine. Before the vote, Foreign Minister Melanie Joly told reporters Canada has always emphasized on Israel's right to defend itself. Joly said, however, how Israel defends itself matters. She said the ceasefire must not be one-sided and that Hamas must lay down its arms and release prisoners. She said Canada remains supportive of a two-state solution. Canada's vote represents a shift from its long-standing practice of voting with Israel on major resolutions at the UN. Edo Moed, Israel's ambassador to Canada, says the UN resolution does not change the situation on the ground. At least two Liberal MPs have disagreed with the government's vote publicly. Jewish MP Anthony Housefather from Quebec says any ceasefire must begin with the release of prisoners by Hamas. Liberal MP Marco Mendicino, a former cabinet minister, says he does not support the call for an unconditional ceasefire. Today is the 67th day since Israel started its war on Palestine. 153 countries voted in favor of the UN resolution yesterday, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. For the first time since the onset of war, Canada has voted in favor of the resolution. 10 countries, including the US and Israel, voted against the resolution. 23 abstained from voting. While the calls for ceasefire become louder, Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 20 Palestinian civilians in Khan Yunis, Gaza. 2 children have lost their lives by shelling in the area. Another 9 deaths in the Al Amal neighborhood in Khan Yunis have been caused by Israeli strikes. The Israeli army says 10 of its soldiers have died since its ground offensive in Gaza. A Palestinian Canadian refusing to evacuate Khan Yunis describes the situation as dangerous and desperate. He says Israeli tanks and snipers are targeting anything that moves. He says there's a lack of safe refuge. Heavy rainfall has triggered flooding in parts of Gaza. Hamas's Qassam brigades is claiming responsibility for firing rockets from Gaza towards Ashdod. The rockets have been intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome. The death toll of the conflict is alarming. At the time of writing, 18,608 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli strikes. Israel's revised death toll stands at 1,147. The U.S. National Security Advisor is set to visit Israel later this week. The news comes following President Biden's comments warning Israel of losing international support due to its indiscriminate bombing of Palestinian civilians. Despite Biden's comments, the U.S. maintains support for Israel's preference for no ceasefire. Hamas is accusing the U.S. and the UK governments of complicity with Israel in its onslaught against the Palestinian people. The response is to the additional sanctions imposed by the two countries on individuals linked to Hamas in Turkey and elsewhere. The sanctions target 8 officials in the US and 7 in the UK. Hamas calls the decision unjust and vows to continue defending what it calls the national rights of the Palestinian people. The Israeli army says it has launched attacks on Hezbollah militant group in Lebanese territory. Hezbollah, on the other hand, claims to have inflicted casualties on Israeli military positions. Tensions between Hezbollah and Israeli forces have escalated since the truce in Gaza ended last week. Canada has pledged support for an accountability system to investigate Israel's military actions during its war against Palestine. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says the high number of civilian casualties in Gaza is concerning. Canada has consistently backed Israel's right to defend itself under international law since the onset of war. However, Joly says Israel's right to exist should not lead to the death of Palestinian civilians. Joly says the violence should end and Israel's actions should comply with international law. She says the core of Canadian foreign policy since the Second World War has been Israel's right to exist, along with the protection of civilians. An investigation by Breach Media has uncovered that the Israeli consulate in Toronto had allegedly orchestrated an opinion poll through Aurora Strategies Global. The company is headed by liberal strategist Marcel Weider. The survey supposedly documents the response of Canadians to Israel's war on Palestine. Weider is being accused of manipulating Canadian public opinion by using ambiguous questions and statements. The firm did not disclose that the poll was being conducted on behalf of Israeli consulate. This is a violation of standards set by the Canadian Research Insights Council. The findings of the poll were reportedly shared within a WhatsApp group called Liberal Friends of Israel, consisting of Liberal Party insiders. Breach Media says it has seen messages shared by the group members to manipulate top officials within the Prime Minister's office. These messages were allegedly shared before the survey's public release. Critics argue that this revelation undermines the integrity of the polling process. They say it is raising questions about the influence of foreign entities on public opinion in Canada. Experts are raising questions regarding the universality of human rights and the efficacy of international law on the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The declaration was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in France on December 10, 1948. It sets out fundamental human rights to be universally protected. However, the dire situation in Gaza casts a shadow on the declaration. Over 20,000 Palestinians have lost their lives during Israel's recent war in Palestine. The catastrophe reveals limitations of applying international law to Palestinians. Israel's prolonged aggression in Palestine and impunity show the need for reform in international law and the UN. Leading sportswear brand Puma has announced the end of its kit sponsorship deal with Israel's national soccer team. The deal was set to expire next year. The news comes as boycotts against companies with ties to Israel are growing. Puma, however, says the move is unrelated to Israel's war in Gaza. The company says the decision was made last year. The company is also terminating its sponsorship deal with the Serbian national team while introducing 2 new signees as part of its marketing strategy. Puma had replaced Adidas as a sponsor of the Israeli national team in 2018. Since then, the sports brand has been a target for boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. The movement encourages consumers to discontinue use of brands that support Israel. The movement alleges that Puma sponsorship extends to teams and illegal settlements on occupied Palestinian land. Puma maintains that it does not support teams in settlements, nor does its Israeli distributors have branches in these areas. The Palestine Book Awards has teamed up with publishers to offer free access to books that shed light on Palestinian history and culture. This initiative is in collaboration with the Publishers for Palestine campaign. It aims to offer readers a deeper understanding of struggles faced by Palestinians living in Gaza, the occupied West Bank, and the Palestinian diaspora. As a part of this effort, Arab Lit Books and Ebb Books are providing complimentary e-copies of their shortlisted books. The collaborative effort aims to make Palestinian literature more accessible to a wider audience. Thank you for watching. Our news is produced by Muslim Network TV, which is a not-for-profit organization. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now, so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad.